it over nicely, or tomorrow there will be no locks there. And you won't be allowed anywhere near the doorstep, hissed a familiar voice into the phone, rising into a shriek. Lydia jerked the red end call button, feeling her fingers tremble. The cold evening air suddenly seemed too thick. Time was running out, so the woman pushed open the heavy plastic doors with the faded sign key cutting and stepped into a cramped room that smelled of metal shavings and grease. Behind the counter stood a tall man in a dark apron, carefully wiping some tool with a rag. "Dennis?" "No," in English. Dennis looked up at the late visitor, automatically glancing at the wall clock, which showed 7:15. "Are you closing?" she asked quietly, trying to steady her breathing and hiding the phone deep in her coat pocket. "It depends on what needs to be done," he replied calmly, setting the tool aside. "If it's a standard English key, we'll manage." Lydia placed a heavy, oddly shaped key with intricate wards and deep grooves on the scratched glass counter. It looked like something from the last century, though in fact it locked a perfectly modern, albeit old, house on the outskirts of Mirhurad. The master took the metal piece, turned it under the light of the desk lamp, and squinted, assessing the complexity of the job. "It's a lever key, and a handmade safe-type one at that," he stated without much enthusiasm. "That's half an hour's work, and my assistant already left. Come back tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow morning will be too late." Her voice trembled, betraying her. "Please, I'll pay double. I critically need a duplicate today." The man studied the exhausted face of the customer. Dark shadows lay under her eyes. The collar of her coat was carelessly turned up, and her hands nervously tugged at the strap of her bag. He sighed, understanding that simply turning her away would not let his conscience rest. "All right, wait," he said, switching on the machine. The room filled with a loud hum. Dennis fixed the blank in place and began to slowly guide the cutter. Lydia froze, watching the process as if her future life depended on it. Suddenly, there was a sharp screech. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air, and the humming stopped abruptly. The master swore through clenched teeth and yanked the plug from the socket. "Well, that's that," he said irritably. The drive belt snapped. "I told the kid to replace it yesterday. So that's it," she whispered in despair, sinking onto the only plastic chair by the wall. "You won't make it." Dennis looked at the broken machine, then at the customer, who seemed ready to cry right there in the middle of the workshop. "Why not? I can finish it by hand with files, but it'll take a while. 2 hours, at least. Do you have time to wait?" "I do," Lydia nodded quickly. "I'll wait as long as needed." The work began. The man took out a set of small files, clamped the blank in a vise, and set to the monotonous, painstaking task. The metal rasped quietly under his steady hands. To ease the tense silence, he decided to talk without taking his eyes off the vise. "My name's Dennis. And yours?" "Lydia. Do you work somewhere around here? I've seen you a few times near the spring." "At the resort clinic, in the reception desk," she answered a little more relaxed. "I hand out appointment slips and listen to complaints about blood pressure and bad water." "Nerve-wracking work," he smiled faintly. "People often come not to be treated, but just to talk." "Exactly. Sometimes it feels like I'm a psychologist on minimum wage." A short silence fell, broken only by the rhythmic sound of metal being filed. The woman looked around the workshop. Neatly hung tools, shelves with dozens of different blanks, a clean workbench. Everything had its place, revealing a person who was meticulous and responsible. "Trouble with relatives?" Dennis asked unexpectedly, brushing away metal shavings. Lydia raised her brows in surprise. "Why do you think that? You rushed in here as if you were being chased. Old key for a private house. Paying double, asking for it urgently. Usually that happens when people are dividing property, or someone is trying to force another person out of the house." She looked out the window, where it was now completely dark. Streetlights dimly illuminated the wet asphalt of Mirhorodska Street. "My ex-husband," she said quietly, deciding to be honest. "Anton. We divorced 3 years ago." He left for someone younger and left me with apartment debts. I had to move into rented housing. And a month ago, my grandmother died and left me her old house on the outskirts of the city. And suddenly my ex remembered I existed? Exactly. Legally, the house is mine, but Anton found some loophole. He claims he invested money in the roof repair 5 years ago, although in reality he just hired a crew with my grandmother's savings. He's threatening to come tomorrow morning, change the locks, and not let me in until I pay him compensation. That's a police matter, he remarked calmly, changing to a finer file. By the time the police sort it out, they'll have hauled away all my grandmother's things. There's a lot there that matters to me. Old photographs, embroidered linens, dishes. To him, it's just junk or a way to blackmail me. I need the duplicate for my neighbor. I'll ask her to sit inside tomorrow during the day while I'm on shift. He won't risk breaking into a locked house where someone's already inside, because I will. You understand. The master stopped working and looked at Lydia carefully. Sounds familiar. People often show their true face when money or square meters are involved. You went through something like that too, she asked cautiously. He nodded, returning to the vice. I had a woman once. We lived together in a common law marriage for over 5 years. We saved up for our own workshop. I worked 2 jobs, saved on everything. And then one day I came home and the things were gone. And so was the money from our joint account. She took every last kopeck, left only a note saying I was too boring, too grounded, thought only about work, and didn't know how to enjoy life. She went to the capital to look for a beautiful life. I'm sorry. That's very cruel. I got over it a long time ago, Dennis shrugged. But I learned my lesson well. Now I value in people not beautiful words, but reliability and loyalty. Someone who stays not only in moments of joy, but also when the machine breaks and you have to file metal by hand. Lydia smiled, feeling her inner tension ease. It turned out to be surprisingly easy to talk to this stranger. No masks, no attempts to seem better than they really were. Just ordinary life stories, without embellishment or exaggeration. Time passed unnoticed. Dennis meticulously shaped every millimeter of the intricate pattern, occasionally comparing it with the original. They talked about everything. Food prices at the market, how hard it is to find a good plumber, their shared dislike of loud parties and pretentious places. It turned out they both preferred quiet evenings at home, liked picking mushrooms in the forest outside town, and didn't understand people who buy expensive cars on credit while eating instant noodles. For me, it has always been a mystery why people create the illusion of wealth, Lydia mused, warming her hands on a paper cup of instant coffee that the master had made. Isn't it simpler to live within your means calmly, without debt? The modern world dictates different rules, Dennis replied, lifting the blank and blowing out the grooves. Everyone wants to look successful. But real success is when you come home in the evening and it feels good there. When there's someone to make tea for you and ask how your day was. The silence in the workshop was broken by the sharp ring of a mobile phone. The woman flinched, nearly spilling her coffee. The ex-husband's name lit up the screen. Don't answer, her companion advised, not taking his eyes off the work. If I don't pick up, he'll start calling the clinic's landline. I know him, she sighed and pressed the answer button. Hello. Even from a distance, the aggressive tone was audible from the speaker. How long are you going to keep hiding? Anton's sharp voice snapped. Think you're so smart. I've already made arrangements with a locksmith. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning, he'll be at the house. We'll cut the old door to pieces if you don't hand over the keys. You have no right. This is private property, an inheritance. Her voice shook, but she tried to stay firm. Tell that to the court. I spent a lot of money and effort on that roof, and you just came in and took everything ready-made. This is your last chance. 200,000 hryvnias in compensation, and I'll forget that address. I don't have that kind of money. Where would I get it? I work at reception. Take out a loan, borrow it, sell the house. I don't care. I'll be there tomorrow morning. The connection cut off with short beeps. Lydia lowered her hand with the phone, staring helplessly into the emptiness. She wanted to burst into tears from her own helplessness. 3 years had passed, and this man was still draining her life, not letting her breathe in peace. Dennis set the file aside, took a clean rag, and carefully wiped the metal dust from his hands. He came closer and sat on the edge of the work table opposite her. He's demanding money. Lydia nodded, swallowing the bitter lump in her throat. $200,000 for repairs he himself made with my grandmother's money. When we were still married. He just made it up as an excuse. He knows I can't fight back on my own. I have no one. My parents died long ago. My brother lives abroad. And my neighbor. What can she do against a healthy man with tools? She'll get scared and go home? The master frowned. A cold glint appeared in his gray eyes. He said he'd come at 8 in the morning. I'm off tomorrow. My assistant is on shift, he said slowly, as if weighing every word. You know what, Lydia, no neighbor is needed. Let me stay at your house. Lydia's eyes widened, unable to believe what she'd heard. You? But why would you get into this trouble? We've only known each other for 2 hours. I don't like injustice, and I can't stand those types who boost their ego by putting women down. Believe me, when your ex sees another man in the house who has no intention of backing down, all his bravado will vanish instantly. People like that are only strong when they feel they can act without consequences, and that the victim is weak. That's very inconvenient, she began to object, although a spark of hope had already lit up inside her. You're not asking, I'm offering. Here's how we'll do it. I'll finish this key now. You go home and rest. Tomorrow at 7:30 we meet by the gate. Go inside. You leave for your shift at the clinic. And I'll stay behind, drink tea, and wait for guests. Lydia looked at the master's broad shoulders, his calm, confident face, his calloused hands. For the first time in years, someone had offered real help without asking anything in return. Without pomp, without empty promises, simply stood up and said, I'll help. Agreed, she whispered. Thank you. The work resumed. Now the sound of the file no longer seemed irritating, but almost soothing. Dennis worked with focus, periodically testing the finished copy against the original with a caliper. You know what's hardest about keys like these? He asked, pulling Lydia away from her sad thoughts. What exactly? The tolerance. The measurement is in fractions of a millimeter. Fall off a little too much and the key will rattle in the lock, not catch the mechanism. Leave too much and it simply won't fit in the slot or will jam completely. You need the perfect balance, just like in human relationships. My balance didn't work out. I kept trying to please Anton, making concessions, smoothing things over, thinking, I'll keep the family together. But it turned out that